Hello there. Throughout this video, we're going to be building this fun gardening game from scratch, where we'll create a controllable player that can plant seeds which grow into flowers that can be harvested. We'll work on an inventory system as well as a flower shop, where we can change flowers into more seeds. By the end of this video, you should have a basic understanding of Godot Tilemap node and some of its various uses. We will also learn how to build a working inventory system which you can use in some of your games. And then we'll learn resources in Godot which are data containers used by other nodes. Now once you've opened your Godot project, you should see a scene main with a map layout and a bunch of assets folder. And I'll link this file in the description below. Now let me begin by explaining some of the changes we see in the project. The node labeled main is of a type tile map, and the tile map is a grid of tile we use to draw the layout of our game, which is what I've done already. And by the right, we have our inspector, and you should see a bunch of properties. For example, the tile set, which is a collection of tiles that can be placed on a tile map node. And then we have layers, and with layers we can draw tiles on top of another tile. And I've created 4 layers, right? The green grass, which is the green background, and then I've also drawn a river on that layer. Then we also have the garden, which I've only drawn the dirt where we can plant our seeds, and I'll explain why later on. And finally we have the wall decor 1 and 2, which is used for the decoration of our world. Alright, now back to our inspector. If we expand the tile set, we'll have a tile size property, which is the size of a single cell in the tile map. Then a terrain, which I'll set the mode to match both the corners and sides. And with that, we can create connected tiles, which I've done for the dirt and the river. So if we go to tile set, the paint tab, and change this to terrain, you can see the terrain bit I have drawn for both the dirt and the river tiles. And then we can then use this to draw on our world and create what you saw earlier. So if we head to the tile map tab and click terrains, we can then draw the tile, and Godot is going to draw and connect the tiles being drawn and the one close to it for us. Right, so we can do this for both the dirt and the river terrains. And now we also have the custom data, and we've created one called the garden, and we've set its type to a bool, and then we painted every dirt, basically any tile we can plant a seed on, to true. So if we toggle on the garden property, we can then paint this property on other tiles. Now let's set up our project. So we'll go to project setting, and we'll define some input actions for our player. So first, plant seed, then we'll add that, then toggle inventory, then our player has 4 directions it can move. So the left, right, front, and back. And let's add those. So the forward, right, now back, then move left, and move right. Then we'll add event for each input action. So first off, the plan seed, we'll add the space key, and let's also use the P. Let's also use the P key. Then for toggle inventory, we'll use the tab key. Then to move forward, we'll use the arrow down key and also the S key. Now back, we'll use the W key and also the up key. Then to move left, we'll use the left key and A. Then finally move right, we'll use D and also the right key. Alright, now we'll head over to our Windows tab and we'll change both the viewport width and viewport height to half their current size. And also make sure that the Windows width and height override is set to its actual value. We'll then change the stretch mode to viewport and the aspect to expand. Next, we'll change the default texture filter to nearest to help give us that pixel graphics. Now let's run this and see how it looks. And this looks amazing. Okay, let's start by working with our player scene. And our player is going to be of a type character body 2D. So in character body, we'll click enter. Then we're also going to add an animated sprite 2D. So let's click that too. And as a child of the character body, we'll add a collision shape. Right. I'm going to rename the character body to a player. And we'll save the scene. Okay, let's work on the animation of our player. We'll add a new sprite frame. And we'll add each respective animation of the player, which are the back, front, and side. And the side is used for both the left and the right. Let's rename this to front and this to side. Great. Now let's add a sprite frame. Now we'll go to our asset folder, the character, and click the character walking back image. We'll change the vertical frames to 1 and the horizontal frames to 6. Then we'll add all frames. Okay, great. Now let's zoom in. Let me just set it back and reposition it properly. Okay, that is done. Let's hit play. Let's change the animation speed to 6. Much better. Now we'll do the same for the rest of the animation. New sprite frame, character walking in front. Then we'll change the vertical to 1 and horizontal to 6. So add all frame. All right. Don't forget to change its animation speed. Let me just move this up. Now we'll hit play. Okay. Then let's finish up with the side. So select the character walking side. Change the vertical to 1 again. Then horizontal to 6. Select all frame and add. Let's change its speed and hit play. Now we've added all the animation and we are up to a great start. So let me just stop this and we'll close the animation panel. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to reposition our animated sprite node so that is directly on top of the player pivot point. So that's the red and purple line you're seeing. I'll toggle on the snap and just drag this up. Okay. Let's just adjust his position a little in the inspector. So that way the player is like stepping on top of the lines. Okay, now we're going to add a new rectangle shape 2D, right? And we'll just set this to fit the player's body. Okay, so now we're just going to drag these lines so that it covers the blue top area of the player. Okay, and you can also go to the inspector, and if you expand the shape you should see a size property, and then you can just adjust it to the size you want. Right, awesome. Now let's start on the script of our player. So we are going to attach a script to the player node, new script, and create. Okay, then we're going to delete all these templates, lines of code, and let me just make this more bold and clearly for us to see. I'll just zoom in, and now we are going to declare an onReady variable of our animated sprite. So onReady var animated sprite. And actually there's an easier way of doing this, which you just go to your scene dock, then click the node, and you hold your control key and you drag. Right, so see it works. Let me just close this, and now we are going to export a variable. So export var move speed. So this is going to be the speed of our player, and we'll set this to a float and 70. And the export variable allows us to change the property in our inspector, right? So you can set this to 100 or whatever value you want. Okay, now we're going to declare a variable direction, and this is going to be of a type vector2. So direction, set its type to be of a vector2, and assign vector2.0. Then we'll define a physics process function. So func physics process. Then at the start, we are going to assign the vector2.0 to the direction. So we'll set the direction to vector2.0 when at the start of every process. Then we'll check if an action was pressed, right? So is action pressed, move left, then we want to play our move left animation. So that is the side. Then we'll say animated sprite 2D dot flip, and we'll set this to true. Great. So by default the side is facing the right, so we need to flip the sprite when we want to move to the left, and we're going to set the direction to be equal to vector2 dot left. Then we can just copy all of this and we'll duplicate it. Okay, then let's change this to an else if statement, and we'll check if the move right was pressed, and flip and set the flip of the sprite to false, and change the direction to vector to the right. Okay, now let's duplicate this one more time and we'll do this for the back. So else if input action backward was pressed, we play the back animation, and we want to make sure that the sprite flip horizontally is false and direction to up. And we'll do this one more time for the forward. So else if this action was pressed, move forward, we want to play the forward animation. Then we are going to also set the flip horizontal to false and direction to down. Nice. We are then going to assign to our velocity variable, which is a property of the character body, the direction multiplied by our move speed. And we are then going to call the move and slide function. Method, right? Sorry for that. Let's run this now. Okay, and yeah, so it works, but we need to stop our animation when we are not pressing any key. So we'll simply say else, then animated sprite 2D dot flip dot stops. Okay, let's test this out again. So we move our character and it stops. Yeah. Okay, so it's working perfectly. Everything's looking good. Great. Now, I think to finish our player, we'll go to the top of our script and we are going to define a signal. So this is going to be for when we want to plant our seed. We'll say signal plant seed, and this is going to be emitted whenever we press we just pressed our plant seed input action. So if plant seed was just pressed, we're going to emit the signal plant seed. Great. Welcome back. In the last part, we worked on our player, and now I'm going to add the player nodes to the main scene. Alright, now I am going to reposition the player. So I'm going to drag the player to the river. Then I'll go to the player scene and change the animated sprite animation to front. Okay. Let's save this and back to our main scene. Yep, looking good. And let's run the scene now. Okay, great. But now we need a camera to follow our player and also zoom in on the scene. So for as a child of the main, we'll add a camera 2D node. Then as a child of our player, we are going to add a remote transform, which is going to transform its own node to the camera. Yeah, So remote transform 2D, and we will assign the camera 2D node to it. Great. We'll change the camera zoom to 2. And now we are going to limit the area our camera can move past. So let's do that. We'll start with the left, and you go to your ruler and just drag it out. So we'll set this to around minus 367 pixels. All right, so we'll do this for the top, and you drag. Say leave this as a negative 152. Okay, and we can just drag the rulers we've created already for the top and bottom. So for the right, 583 should do. So 583. And now for the bottom, you drag that, and 319. Yep. Then we'll toggle on smoothing and toggle on the position smoothing. Right, so let's save that, and we'll clear our ruler guides. Okay, now let's run our scene. And great, so our camera follows the player wherever it goes. And now, yep, so it doesn't move past that edge we had set before. Okay, now we need to work on our grid helper. Now to start with the grid helper, let's add a sprite 2D node. So our sprite, yep, then we'll go to our assets folder. Under the others, you see the grid selector, and we'll drag the grid selector to the texture property. Let me just close this folder. Okay. All right, we will toggle off the center property. That is going to change the sprite's pivot offset value to the top right corner, and we'll run the scene. Okay, so you can see our grid helper right there. Cool. Okay, now let's rename the node to grid helper. So grid helper, yep, and add a new script to the main node. So click create, and we'll get rid of all these lines of code. So delete. First, we'll need to get the already variable of the grid helper. Okay, control drag, and also the player. We'll drag this as well. We'll call the physics process function. So from physics process, and we'll add an underscore to the delta parameter. And we'll declare a variable player map coordinate. So player map coord, and assign to it the value returned when we call the tilemap local to map method, which returns the cell coordinates based on the position, which has to be a global position for it to work. Then we'll declare another variable player dir, standing for the direction, which is going to be for the direction the player is facing. So the direction, and if you remember the direction variable we have in our player script. So we're going to use that. We'll declare yet another variable player maps coordinate. And assign to it the addition of the player map coordinate and a vector2 integer of the player direction. And we'll divide it by 32 as the vector2 integer value are limited to 32 bits and we need a precise value. Then we'll assign to the grid helper the position or global position of the product between the player map coordinates multiplied by the tileset size, which I'll be using 16. Yep. Let's run this scene. Okay, good. It is working, but we will need to display the grid helper behind our player. Now I'm just going to reposition the grid helper node. Now I'm just going to move the grid helper node up. Let's run the scene again. Awesome. This is good. I think it's alright. Now we can move on to the next part, which is going to be working on the plant. Welcome back. Now we want to work on our plant, but before then, if you found any value so far, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel. That will really mean the world. Now our plant is going to be easy as well. We'll add a node 2D and rename this to base flower. So base flower. Okay, and we are also going to add a sprite 2D node. Okay, that is added. And now then a timer. Right, so let me explain what is going to happen. The flower has 4 phases: the seed, sprout, bud, and blossom. And what we are going to do, we want each phase to have a certain amount of time it takes before it moves to the next phase. So let's say I want the time it takes for the seeds to move from the sprout phase to be 5 seconds. Then maybe from the sprout to bud to be 3 seconds. Then maybe from bud to blossom should be like a million seconds. Then when we are on our blossom phase, we don't need to call any timer. We just want to say, hey, this flower is now harvestable. That's correct. Hopefully that was clear enough, but not to worry, you understand it better once we get it done. So we'll need to toggle on the one shot property and lastly add an animation player node. So you search for the animation player, and this is actually going to do most of the work for us. And this is what we're going to be using to switch stages, like from 0 to 1 to 2, then lastly 3. Okay, let's see. Let's save this. We'll create a new folder, flowers. So flowers, then click save and add a new script. We'll define it a class name flower, class name flower, and then we'll declare an export variable amount, which is the amount of flowers the player is going to earn when he harvests the flower. And we'll set its type as an int, and I'll assign 2 as its value. Then we're also going to define another export variable, a boolean one called harvest ready, which is set true when our flower is ready to be harvested. So set its type as bool, and we'll set it to false as our plant isn't ready at the start. We'll declare a variable index and assign 0 as its value. You can rename this also to stage or phase, whichever suits you best. We'll call a ready function and say our animation player does play and convert our index to a string. Oh, I need to delete this dot, actually then play. Okay, so we'll call this string method, that is the str, and as pass the index as its argument. So that way our plant starts the animation and begins its growth stage. Then let's connect the timer timeout signal, and once there is a timeout, we want to move to the next stage. So first of all, we'll increment the index value by 1. So index plus equals 1. And just like the ready function, we'll play the animation of our new index. And that should be it. Okay, now most of the work will actually be done by the animation player, which I think is a good chance for you to see how powerful the animation player in Godot is if you haven't used it before. Now we are going to instantiate or inherit from the flower scene, which allows us to reuse the same scene and code we've written. And inheritance can come in handy as it helps us save a lot of time when you want the same thing for multiple objects. So if you want to learn more on inheritance, you can click the card being hovered or check the description right after this video. Now, if you check your assets folder under tileset, you should see an object image, which is the flower phases, the seed, the bud, and the harvested sprites. And we'll drag that to the sprite texture and set its region to be enabled. If you check the seed bag or flower folder, I have taken the time to crop out and label each flower, and you can simply rename the nodes to the flower name you want to create. I'll name this to Bluebell. So Bluebell. Okay, and now let's start on our animation, and let's create a new animation. I'll name this 0. Okay, and I'm going to drag this a little, and we'll change its duration to 0.01. So that is how long our animation is going to take, and we can leave the loop off. Snap is okay. Now let's go to our sprite 2D region, edit region. Okay, and I will cut out the flower except the last, since it's an aquatic plant, and I would have preferred if they were others, but there are not much of this type. So, but now let's set the snap mode to pixel snap. Nope. Okay, yeah, grid snap. Yeah, that's what we want, and we'll simply need to snap the aspect we need, which is the seed. And we'll continue downward. And we're going to just continue like that downward for the other stages. So just simply snap out the texture we want to just drag. And as you can see, other sprites are larger, which is why we have to make use of the region. So that's the face stage done, and I'm going to zoom in and add the rect to the animation timeline. So go off the reset track and click create. We'll also want the seed to be placed on top of the pivot line. That is the red and pink which you are seeing. Okay, nice. And we'll add the position to the timeline as well. So just go to the transform and click the key of the position and it's added. Great. And now let's add the timer. We'll click the call method track and pick the timer node. Then right click to insert a key and we'll select the start method, which starts the timer, and we can pass the wait time, which has to be a float. And then click and we'll change the type to a float. So change the type to a float and we'll set a wait time value before it moves to the next stage. Let's say 2 in this case. And we can simply just duplicate this animation and repeat the same thing for these next 2 animations. So click duplicate, rename this to 1, and we'll click on our sprite 2D. Sprite 2D. Yep. Okay. Now we are going to change. Again, you just click and drag out the sprite texture you want. And now let's add the rect to the okay. What happened here? Okay, I think this was just a problem from Godot. Let's add the rect again. So drag, close, then add to the timeline. Okay. Let me see. Yep. And we'll add a value for this, let's say 3. And we'll duplicate this now. So for the second stage, edit region, and we'll drag out this sprite texture. Great. So just drag this up to position it properly and add both the rect and position to the animation timeline. And let's see. Okay, looking good. And now we'll want to do for our last stage. And now you see when we even change the animation, the plant stays on that center line, which is what we want. So duplicate the animation one more time, rename to 3, and we'll go into the sprite 2D, edit its region, and drag out the sprite. So the last stage, that's when it's ready to be harvested. And it's also not positioned properly, so we'll have to Add that to the keyframe. Add also this keyframe. Great. Let us see now. Okay, because already our plant is ready, so we simply just need to say, hey, this plant is done growing and is ready to be harvested. So we are going to look for the harvest. So add a new property track, then select the blue bell and click the harvest ready. Right click, insert new key. So that's all stages done. So let's say we have our seed stage, our sprout, bud, then blossom, which is already great. And if we go to the bluebell, you can see the harvest ready was toggled on, which I was talking about. Let's just add this to the reset animation. Awesome. Okay. Okay, now all our animation is done. We are going to save this. We will create a new folder and call this varieties. So this is where we're going to put all our flowers. And yep, so just hit save. And we can just do this again for the rest of our plants. And now I'm going to do this one more time, and you can just do the rest on your own if you want. So this will inherit from the base flower. We'll rename this to Daisy. Daisy. Great. And what to do? Let me zoom in. Create a new animation. Set as 0. We'll set its animation time to 0.01. And we'll simply do the same thing all over again. So we'll go to our sprite 2D, go to region, edit region. Nice. Then our daisy flower. Then we're going to crop this. All right, let me just zoom in, and we're going to toggle on the snap prop option. We'll reposition the flower. So just go to the and add this, then add its position. Now the timer. Great. Now let's also add a track for our timer. Select the timer, right click, insert new key, and the start method. Okay, we'll change this to float and the value to 4, and we'll simply duplicate this and do it for the rest of the animation. So we'll just let me just change this to 5 or probably 3. Then we'll go to our sprite 2D. Okay, then edit region, and we'll snap this close, already placed perfectly. Add, okay, the same problem. We'll have to go back to our edit region and snap this out again. Okay, add the keyframe, also the position. Right. Okay, let's duplicate this again. Not new, duplicate to 3, 2. Then let's change the wait time to 1 million. Just kidding. Actually, let's change this to 4 or 6. Yeah. Then we'll also need to set the edit region. So snap this, close, reposition this. Right. Let's add the keyframe. Add these two. Okay, now great, all positioned well. And now for our last stage, so stage 3, let's remove the and put the property track daisy, harvest ready property. We'll insert a new key and set the value to true. Now let's change the region rect. Go to your sprite 2D, edit region, and we'll snap this. Let's actually drag this up for that little. Okay, now let's just move this up to add the keyframes, and yep, all done. Let's just check all the stages. Okay, positioned perfectly, all good. And we need to save this. All right, awesome. Now you can continue with yours, and I'll see you very soon.
1 hour later!
Okay, so I've created a scene for each flower, and now I'm going to just close their scenes real quick. Now let's do this in our main scene. So back to our main script. Let's close this output panel real quick. All right, now we're going to define a variable at the top of our script, so that is right here. We'll declare a variable current seed and assign to it a preload of any flower scene of your choice. All right, so we'll call the preload method and pass the bluebell scene as its argument. And whenever our player emits the plant seed signal, we'll just instance our flower and add that to our scene tree. So we'll connect the player plant seed signal, and now we'll connect the plant seed signal to the main script, hit connect, and now we've connected it to our main scene script, which is good, great. And declare a variable cell local coordinate and call the local to map method and pass the grid helper position. Now call the local to map method and we'll say grid helper, and we are going to pass its position as the argument. Now I'm using position because the grid helper is local to JSON, so both the position and global position will return the same value. We will then declare a variable, and this variable is going to be used to store the tile we've got for the tile map, which is going to be of a tile data, which contains information about a single tile. So we'll see stuff like if it's flipped or event, or even get its custom data. So if you want to learn more on the tile data, you should definitely check out the official Godot documentation. Now back to our script. Then we'll say get cell tile data. So cell tile data, yep. And for the layer argument, we'll pass the index of the garden. So let me just navigate to the Tilemap inspector, which is what I was talking on earlier. It makes it easier, so you know whatever tile you get, you know it from the garden layer. But not to worry, if you have other stuff drawn on the garden layer, that is why we have included the custom data. So the garden layer is on the layer 1, and we'll pass the local cell coordinate as well. And let me go back to our 2D scene, and we'll actually need to check for if there's a tile on where the player is, because as you can see, some areas in the garden are gray, meaning we don't have any tile there, and we'll need to check for that. Next, we'll create an expression which will check if the tile or the currency is null, and if this expression returns true, we'll return out of this function. So our current seed is equals to new, and we'll just return out of this function. And let me just give some spaces so we can see this more clearly. Nice. But now, if there is a tile and we have a seed, we'll get the custom data garden. So if you check the custom data, you should see the garden, and we are going to pass that as the argument. So garden, which the custom data is going to return either true or false. And for now, what we simply want to do is print true. So if the expression returns true, we just want to print true. And don't know why this keeps popping up, but let's just type that. Okay, that should be it. Okay, let's run this scene. Okay, now so I'm outside the garden and it doesn't work. Let's try moving inside, which it works. As you can see, it prints true. Now let's try it somewhere else, and yeah, it also works. Good. Okay, so we're getting closer. Now let's work on actually planting the seed. So what we'll do, we'll instance the plant and add it to the scene tree. We are going to do this in a method plant seed and pass the cell local coordinates. Okay, so we are going to define a function plant seed. There it is, plant seed, and we let us pass the cell local coordinates. We will then define our function plant seed. So func plant seed, let me just copy this, we'll paste and pass an argument. Let's say we are going to call the argument coord, so for coordinate, and this is going to return a void. Now we'll define a variable for our data. We'll instance the current seed, then add it as a child of the scene, and so equals, and say current seed dot instantiate, right? And we'll just say get node will get the actually we need to say add node, right? So it's add child, not node, add child, and pass the plant as the argument. Okay, so then we'll call the map to local, which returns the centered position of a cell based on the local map coordinate and assign it to the global position of the plant. Plant dot position is equals to map to local and pass the code parameter as the argument. Alright, that should do it. Alright, let's try this out. Okay, we still can't plant outside from the garden, which is okay. And nice, our plant is working, is also growing, but is being displayed above our player. So we'll actually need to work on that. And there's a quick fix to it. And I think also let's try fixing that little bounce when the plant is being added. And I'm guessing it's probably the plant reset animation, right? So we'll need to go to our reset animation, and let me just adjust the position here. Great. Okay, back to our main scene. Run this again. Okay, let's move plant. Say kind of probably forgot to add the keyframe here. I'll probably just do that later on. Now I'll add a node 2D to the scene. So select the main node, add the node 2D. Nice. See it right here, and we're going to use that to sort everything. So, and rename it to world. Alright, let me just kind of arrange this real quick. So move the world node up, and I'm going to drag our player to the world node as well as the grid helper, and we'll go to the ordering property section and enable the Y sort property. I'll add another node 2D, and this will be for the flower. So let me just add the node 2D and move this, not that it matters. So we are going to rename this node to flower. Okay, move this above the player, and we'll also go to the ordering section and enable its Y sort too. So that way the plant too can be sorted and being displayed over other plants. Now let's head over to the script and add the plant as a child of the flower node instead. So we'll say get node world flowers. Yep, then don't forget your dot. Okay, let me just be sure. We'll run this again. Oops, an error. Invalid get index position. Okay, since we need to update the already variables, so let me just change that, and this to world / grade helper, and we'll run this again. Okay, so we're walking, plant. Let's plant again and wait for this to grow. Okay, everything seems to be working well. The plants at the bottom are being displayed over the ones at the top. So yeah, everything's working well. Okay, I'm trying to remember something. Oh yeah, but there's one more problem. Let me just run this again so we can see. So let me drag this, and the main problem is we can still plant even though we've planted on a tile. So all right, we can add more than one plant in a single cell, so in a single position, and we'll need to fix that right away. So we'll declare a variable planted flowers, which is going to be of a type dictionary, and we'll store the plant cell's coordinate as the key and the plant itself as its value. So assign an empty dictionary to the plant flowers. Now let's drag this down. Now, if the custom data guarding is true, we will also check if the tile cell local coordinate hasn't been added to the planted flowers dictionary. So if not, planted flowers dot has, and we'll pass as the argument the cell local coordinate. Alright, so this will return either true or false. Then, if not, then we will now plant our seed. And once we plant our seed, we want to add to the plant flowers dictionary the plant cells position. So in the bracket, pass the coordinate, so that is going to be for our key, and for the value we'll just pass our plant. Yup, and that should be it. Okay, that should do it, and let's run this again. So we plant the flower, and nice. Let's try planting it again, and it doesn't work. Nice, because that's what we want. Now let's work on harvesting our plant once it's finished growing. So now we will need to go back to our base flower script. So base flower, nope, wrong thing. This is the wrong script. Okay, yeah, the script, and let's go down, and we'll add a harvest function. So func harvest, and this is going to be called when we want to harvest our plant. So func harvest, and we are just going to say queue free. Right, that should be it. And we'll need to go back to our main script, I think. So no, something's wrong. Okay, yeah, that should do it. So once we plant and the player wants to harvest, we'll simply just check if a plant was already planted, then and the plant is ready to be harvested, then just harvest that flower. So let's just do that, and we'll say else if, and we'll call a method is harvestable and pass the cell local coordinate. So cell local code, and let's see. Now let's create the function for this method, and we are going to write it down here. Let me just create some space. We'll say func is harvestable. So let me just copy this and paste it here. Func is harvestable, and we're going to receive a parameter, and this is going to return a void. We'll declare a variable data, and we'll then get the plant from the planted flower dictionary, and with this data we are going to return if our plant is harvestable or not. Okay, we are going to return a bool, And now if the plant is ready, we'll return the plant harvest ready variable. So harvest ready, I think in our base flower. Yeah, so let's copy this. Let's go back and we'll paste it here. So return data harvest ready now. But if it's not, but if the data is not equals to null, we'll return false. So if data is equals to null, so it means our plant is not in our dictionary. We want to say, hey, so there isn't a plant in the dictionary, and we'll say else return false. That is good. Now back to our expression. If it's true, we'll call a different method, harvest plant, and pass the cell local coordinate. So let's define the function for this method. Okay, so let me just create some space. Yep, we'll say func harvest plant. So plant, this is going to receive a parameter as well and return a void. And we are going to define a variable plant, which we're going to use to get the plant value from our plant flower dictionary. So plant flower, and we'll get the flower object, right? So and pass key as the argument. I will go to our base flower script. Let me just copy this. Okay. Then we'll check if it has the method harvest and call the harvest method. So if plant dot has, we'll pass as a string the harvest. So if it has the harvest method, our plant variable is going to be of a type flower, right? Okay, yeah, that's it. So if it has the harvest method, then we want to call our plant harvest method. Okay, since since something is wrong, let me just check that real quick. That's weird. Okay. Let me just fix this. All right, now that should take care of that. And I'm going to close this in. And let me just run this again. So our player is working and we plant this. Let's wait for our flower to grow. Click to harvest. Okay, why is it giving us an error? Oh, sorry. This is supposed to be has method, not has. We'll run the scene again. All right, so our player is working and we'll plant our seed. Now let's wait for our plant to grow and try harvesting it. And yeah, so it works. But it seems we can't plant anymore, and that's because we haven't removed the cell coordinate from the planted dictionary. So we'll have to go back and do that. All right, so we'll say planted flowers dot erase and pass the key as this argument. Okay, now let's run this again. So our player is working, and I believe after this we'll be working on our resources. And our plant grows. Okay, now we harvest. Then let's try planting on there again. And let's try planting another flower again. And yeah, so it works. And I'll see you in the next part of this video. Okay, now we're going to start with our resource. And like I explained earlier, the resource are data containers. And these are used by other nodes. So basically, they don't really do anything on their own. And most of the stuff you save or load from disks in Godot are usually resource. So your scene, your script, or your image, animation, audio stream, they are all resources. And when the engine loads a resource from the disk, it only loads it once, right? So if a copy of a resource is already in memory, trying to load that resource again will just return the same copy every time of that resource. So basically, you'll get a better understanding of resource once we start. So right now, we're going to create a script, and we're going to name this to plant name. That's going to be the name of our resource. And this is going to inherit from a resource object. So as you can see here, then click create, and we are going to set a new path for our script. And we'll need to do this separate from the other scenes. We're going to create a folder. We're going to call this resource. All right, resource. And we'll click open and click create. And we're going to define a class name. We'll call this plant name. And this resource is going to be used to store the plant name, or you can use it to store. Basically, this resource is going to be used to store our plant name. All right, now, so plant name, and we're going to set its type as a string. Great, and that should be it for our first resource script. Now, I'm going to close the script, and let me just adjust this real quick so we have a better view. All right, now to create a resource, head over to your inspector. Then you'll see a file with a plus icon. Then you're just going to click that. So you can see the list of resources we can create. We'll search for our plant name. Yep, this. And then create a new plant resource. And in your assets folder, there is a seedbag folder which contains a list of seedbag sprites with their respective name, and you can just make use of that. So we'll say for this bluebell. Yep, bluebell. Then once you've written the name, be sure to always save this resource. And we're going to go to our resource folder, and we'll want to create a new folder, and we'll call this folder plant names. So plant name, and don't forget to also rename the resource. So bluebell. Then we'll click save. All right. Now we are going to do this for the rest of our seed bag. So I'll just do this one more time. You create the plant data resource, set its name. We'll use Daisy for this one. Then don't forget to save and rename the resource to Daisy. Great, now you can do the rest. All right, now what we're going to do, we need to create a different resource, and this one is going to store both the plant name, then the texture, and its quantity. All right, so we're going to create a new script, and we're going to rename this to plant data. be sure it inherits from the resource object. So don't forget to rename to plant data, and we'll set a path for the file. And we'll save this in the resource folder. So click open and we'll create a new script. Great. Now we have some unsaved file. Let's just get rid of those. I'll click the plant data, reload, close. Let's discard this, close, also this. All right, now we'll define a class name for our script. So class name plant data, so plant data, and we are going to export some variables. So first off, we'll export a variable to hold the plant name. So export var plant name, so plant name, and we'll set, let's actually name it to plant name resource, and set a style to plant name. So it's going to hold our plant name resource, and we also want to hold its texture, right? So the sprite we can use for our inventory for holding the seed bag, or like our flower shop. So this is going to be helpful, and we need to create a getter and setter for this. So say get and return the texture, and we'll say set, which is going to receive a value, and we are going to assign that value to the texture. Okay, and we also want to hold the quantity of whatever item we have. So we'll define another export variable, var quantity, set is type to an int, and create a getter and setter for this too. So return the quantity. We also want to create the setter, also receives a value, and you say quantity is equals to value. Nice. And now we want to create a function, and this function is going to be used to return our plant name, right? So we'll say func get plant name is going to return a C string, so a string return, let's get return plant name resource dot plant name. Great. Now we are going to create a resource for this too. Now, so click the file icon, create a new plant data resource, and we are going to drag each element to it. So let's start with the plant name. So go to your plant name folder and drag the bluebell resource. Now we'll go and also drag its seed bag. Nice. And we'll set the quantity we want at the start of our game to, let's say, 2. Now let's save this. Click save, and we'll create this in a new folder, and we're going to call this folder seed bags. And don't forget to rename the resource, so blue bell, and hit save. And let's do this one last time again, and we'll do this for the rest. So drag a sprite, drag the plant name, we'll set the value, click save, and rename this to Daisy. Click save. All right. Now we can do this for the rest. Actually, let's rename this to seed. Instead of seed bags, let's rename this to seed list. Alright, now we also need to create a new resource, and this is going to hold our plant data we just created and the scene of the plant. So, and this is also going to inherit from the resource. So rename this to seed data, and this is going to inherit from the resource. Let's set that. And let's set the path. So open and click create. Nice. We're going to define a class name for the script. So say class name seed data. Nice. And we'll define an export variable. Okay. Or actually, let's define a signal. So this is going to be emitted when the quantity of our seed has been changed. So say signal quantity change, and it's going to receive the new quantity. Now let's define an export variable. Export var plant data resource, and is going to hold our plant data resource. Then we're going to export another variable which is going to hold the scene of the flower we want to plant, and we're going to call this plant scene, and we'll set its type to be of a packed scene. All right, then we'll create a function seed left, and this is going to return an expression which will be equivalent to either true or false. So we'll return plant data resource.quantity is greater than 0. So return plant data resource dot quantity greater than 0. Nice. Let me give some spacing here. All right. Now, then we'll define another function add quantity, which is pretty much self-explanatory. So this method will be called whenever we want to add to our plant data resource quantity. And we'll say if this value is greater than 0, then plant data resource dot quantity plus equals the value. All right. What to do again? Then we'll create another function, and we'll call it subtract quantity, and this will check if there is any seed left, and if there is, subtract from the quantity. So this is going to return a void, right? And then we'll check if there is a seed left. We'll call the seed left method, and if this return true, we are going to minus from our plant data resource quantity property, right? So those minus 1, I take 1 out of the item quantity. Then we'll also emit the plant change signal and pass as an argument the new quantity. So pass the plant data resource quantity as its argument. Now we are almost done, and I just want to create a getter function to get the texture or its quantity or the plant name. So func get texture, and this will return a texture. So set its type as a texture. Nice. So let's write return plant data resource dot texture. Now we'll do the same. Now we'll do the same for the quantity. We'll say func get quantity. So get quantity returns an integer, and this is going to return the plant data resource quantity value dot quantity. And lastly is the seed name. So we'll create a function that's going to return our seed name. So func get seed name. Nice. And it's going to return a string. So set its type to a string. Nice. And this will just say plant data resource dot get plant name. Now, like the others, we're also going to create a new seed data resource. So click create a new resource, and let's click that again, and we are going to search for our seed data. Okay. Oops. And create a new seed data resource. Then we'll drag the seed plant data. So go to your seed list and drag the blue bell. And also its seed scene. So go to your flower folder. So flower, the varieties, and we'll drag the blue bell. Right. Now let's save this. So click the save icon, and we'll save this in a new folder. And we're going to create a folder, and we'll call this seed scene data. So seed scene data. Yup. Now we're going to rename this to our blue bell. And we'll save the resource. All right, let's do this one more time. So we are going to create a new seed data resource, create, and drag our daisy, right? And also drag its scene. Now we are going to save this resource, rename to daisy. Hit save. And yeah, so we're going to do for the rest of our seeds. Now we're going to create another resource, but this time is to hold the seed bags as for our inventory, right? So all we're going to do now, we're going to create a script again, and we'll name this to seed resource, and it's also going to inherit from the resource object. So let's save this in our resource folder. Okay, so just save this here, open. I'm going to change this to a small later. Okay, now create. Now we're going to define a class name. We will say seed resource. And we are going to export a variable called seed list, which will be an array that holds all our seed resource objects. Then we'll define a function get seed data, and this will receive a value and return the seed data. So get seed data, this is going to receive a value and return the seed data. Okay, now we're going to loop through the seed list. So we'll say for child in seed list, then we'll check if the child seed name is equals to the value, and then return the seed is equals to value, then return the child, which is the seed. But if you can't find it, then we'll simply just return null. Now we'll create a function getSize, and this is just going to return the size of our seed list array. So getSize returns an integer, and we'll say return the seed list dot size. Yes. And now let me give some space. Then the final function get seed list, which is just simply going to return the seed list array. So this is going to return an array of our seed data, which is the seed list, and this is going to be used by the inventory or our shop. So return seed list. Great, that should do it. Now we are going to create a new seed resource. So search for the seed resource and click create. And now we are going to drag each seed scene data item. So we are going to drag each seed list resource to our array. So like the bluebell, and we need to set the size of an array, which is 8. So, and then we'll just drag each of them. So once you've dragged each seed data resource, we are going to save this, right, which contains our data. We will save this in our resource folder. We're going to rename this to seed resource and save. Now we're going to reuse the plant data we created earlier for creating the flower resource we'll use in our flower shop. So create a new plant data resource. So search for the plant data. Nice. And we are going to, so we're just going to, and check your asset folder. You should see a plant folder, and we're simply going to do the same thing we did for the seedless resources the last time. So we're just going to do it like this, like our daisy, and just fill in. So actually we need to create the resource again. So let me just quickly get this. We'll start with our bluebell harvest sprite, which is the harvested sprite for our blue bag seed bag. To bluebell, right? Now let's do this again, and we'll also drag its name, and you can leave the value as 0. And now let's save this. We're going to create a new folder. Let's call it flower list, and we'll rename the resource and hit save. Create a new plant data resource, and we'll drag our daisy as well as the daisy harvested sprite. So hit click save, rename to daisy, and save. Great, so we'll do this for the rest. Alright, now that's done, we'll need to create a new resource script, and this will be like the seed inventory, which is going to hold all our flower list. So go to file, new script, and we're going to call this flower resource. So flower resource, we'll set its path to be in our resource folder, and this is going to inherit from the resource object. Hit create, and first off we're going to define a class name flower resource. So flower resource without the S. And now let's create a function get size, which is going to return our flower list size. This is going to return an integer, so we'll say return our flower list. Oh, sorry, forgot to create that. So export var flower list. Var flower list. And we are going to set its type as an array of plant data. So the get size is going to return the flower list size. Yeah, we'll define a different function. Okay, so this is supposed to be a func. All right, now let's create another function, get flower list, which will return an array of plant data. So paste this here, get flower underscore list. Right, so it's going to return an array of our plant data. Oops, this is right here. So return flower list. Flower list, yeah. All right, now I'm going to create a new flower resource. So flower resource, hit create, and we're going to set its size to 8 and drag each flower list item. All right, now don't forget to save your resource. We're going to name this as flower resource. Flower resource, and hit save. And yeah, that pretty much sums it all for resources. Welcome back, and this time we are going to be working on our inventory system. But if you've gotten any value to find this video, consider dropping a like or subscribe, and let's begin. So we're going to create a new scene and add a texturate node. Then we're going to rename this to item info. So item info, great. Then we're going to add a margin container, then another texturate. So add node, and we'll search for the texture rect. And lastly, a label. We are going to drag the inventory slot to the item info texture, which you can find in the inventory folder in your assets folder, right? And we just click and drag this. Yes, great. and set its margin size to 48 by 48. Yeah. Now let's drag a seed back to see how this looks. So I'll select the texture red and go to our seedbag folder and drag the bluebell seedbag. Okay, and we'll need to add some margin. Alright, so let's go to the margin container theme override and we'll set each margin property to 9. Okay, now let's the margin container take the full rect of the item info. So click for it to take the full rect of the slot container, and then we also need to we'll then set the expand mode to ignore size and stretch mode to keep aspect centered. Now for the label, set it to the bottom right. So click this and let's add a text to see how this look. Okay, and then the horizontal alignment to right and the vertical alignment to bottom. Nice. Let me just drag this. Now we'll create a new label setting. All right, and we also need to add a font, which I've already provided one in our asset folder. So let's check this and drag the Kenny Future font. Okay, and then you can also resize this. Also let's add an outline. So we are all done with our font. Close this. Let's go to our outline section and we'll set its size to 5. Great. And let's just change its color to black. Maybe a shadow. Let's reduce the outline size to 3, the shadow to 2, and increase its transparency. Okay, we'll set its offset to 2, 1, and let's set this to 0 actually. I think the outline is fine enough. Now we are going to add an animation player, which we are going to use to play a flash effect on our text when it's empty. So this is going to indicate that there is no more item to be used. So let's add an animation player. So create a new animation and we'll call this flash. Then we're going to change the animation duration to 0.2. 0.2, yeah, and set a snap to 0.05. So 0.5. Let's expand the timeline. Great. And let's set our flash effect. All right, next we'll modulate the text. So click on the key to add it to the animation time frame. Next we'll modulate it to red. We'll drag this here. Right, great. And the keyframe. Now let's drag this here, reset the modulate and add the keyframe again. Drag, then just set it to red again. So let's go back and set this to red, and yeah, then we'll add a new keyframe again and white, then add a keyframe, and now if we play our animation we get this little red flash effect. Nice. So whenever our player doesn't have any seed left, we can just play this animation. Okay, So let's save this in a new folder. We'll call this new folder user interface and hit save. Great. Now let's close our animation panel. Now we'll create a new script. Let's get rid of this. We are going to create a function to update the items. So we'll say set item info, and this is going to receive a texture and a value. So set item info, and we are going to set its parameter name to item texture for the first. This is going to be of a type texture. Why isn't displaying? Auto worries. Then the other two value, and this is going to return a void. Great. Then we'll update the margin container texture with the item texture. Then we'll call a method setLabel and pass the values as an argument, which will be used to update the label text. So we'll set the label, which receives a value, and this will update the label node text and set the value as a string. So margin container texture with slash texture, slash label dot text, and pass this as a string the value. Great. Then we'll declare a new function, play flash animation, which other node can use, and call which other nodes can use to call to play our flash animation. So animation player dot play flash. Nice. Now let's work on a slot for our inventory. So we'll create a new scene, then add a panel container. We'll search for panel container, and we're going to instance the item info scene. Right. So let's go back to our item info scene. So let me test this. Okay, I'll just reset to make it empty, and our label will get rid of the two. Go back to the inventory scene. Now we'll need to be able to select a slot, so let's add a control node. So select the panel container, and we'll add a control node. Nice. Then a texture button, and let the button take the full rect of our container. So set its anchor to the full rect. Nice. We are going to rename this to slot container. Slot container. And the node to button holder. So button holder. Now save the scene. Hit save. And now let's start scripting the inventory. And let's add a new script. Create. And now let's get rid of this template code. And we're going to define an onReady. Okay, so we'll start by defining the slot selected signal, which is going to pass the slot, which is what holds the flower scene we'll use. So slot selected, and this is going to pass the slot position, right? And we'll declare an onReady variable of our item info. So assign will get the item info node, right? And we'll define a variable seed data resource. Nice. And set its type to be of seed data. Right, so we're going to use this which we created earlier. Let's go back. Right. Seed data. Yep. So then we'll connect the button down signal to the script. Double click the button down to connect, hit connect, and yep, so it's connected to our main. And now what we're going to do, then we're going to check if the seed data resource.seedLeft. So we'll call the seedLeft method. And if there is seed left, we want to assign the seed data resource to the current scene in our main. We'll put a pass for now because we want to create an autoload, right? So we are going to create a new script. Okay, so we'll create a new script global, which is going to be an autoload. So we'll say update station. And we'll define a signal seed change, which is going to receive a new seed. Let's define another signal update station, and we're going to use this later on. And we can hit save. And then in our item info script, we can just define the global right there. Next, let's now actually add this script as an autoload. And if you want to learn more on autoload, I have an amazing video which I'm going to link in the description. I can check it out after this video. Now we'll say global.emit signal. So .emit signal, and we're going to emit the seed change signal and pass the seed data resource as an argument. All right. So once this is emitted, our main is going to have access to get the seed data packed scene, so the plant scene, which we can then just call and instantiate that flower and add to our scene. So all right, should we go to our main and connect that now? I think let's do that later on. So now we need to emit the slot selected signal and pass its position. Emit signal, we'll call the slot selected and pass its position. Yeah, so pass the position as its argument. Great. Now let's see. Next, we'll define a function update quantity, which we'll use to update the item info label. So func update quantity, this is going to return a void. So item info dot set label. Right, so set label. I think that's the name, right? Let's just check that. So yeah, set label. Just okay. And we'll pass the seed data resource dot get quantity method. We'll also define a method which will connect the seed data quantity change signal and call the item info set label method. So we'll say already quantity changed, and it's going to receive a new quantity, and this is going to return a void. So return a void, and we'll say item info dot set label, right? And we'll pass the new quantity as its argument. Next, let's define a function setup which receives a value, and we'll use this to assign a value to the seed data resource. So we'll say func setup, this receives a value, and then we are going to assign to the seed data resource the value. So let's write that. We're going to say seed data resource is equal to value, and we're going to connect the quantity change signal to the on quantity change method. So quantity change dot connect, and we'll pass our callable. Yep, nice. And let's take a look at the script. I think that should be it, right? Finally, let's create our inventory. So create a new scene and add a panel container. So a panel container, let's look for that. Yep. Then we need to also add a texture rex for the background, which in our asset, the inventory, you could see the inventory background. Then a texture rate, and drag the inventory background. So drag. Now let's try resizing our background size, and you can see that this doesn't scale well. So instead it's just being straight, and we can fix this by simply changing this from a texture rect to a 9 patch rect node, right? But it still isn't going to work because we need to edit the patch margin, which is going to allow this to stretch well. Let's try changing the left to 11. And now if we try resizing this again, you see the left stays put and intact. So let's do this for the rest. So select the 9 patch, and I'll change this to 11. We'll set the right 2 to 11 as well as the bottom. Right, now this is going to size the image perfectly. So if we select our panel container and drag this, yep, so nice. Now, okay, nice. So it doesn't stretch anymore. Now I'm going to add a margin container and drag it up as a child of the panel container. Then we'll add a grid container and click the margin container. Then search for the grid container. Yep. And again as a child of the margin container. Then add a texture rate. So we will search for our texture rate, and the texture rate is going to be used for our selector, right? The inventory selector. Then okay, now I'm going to rename this to inventory. So inventory, nice. Then let's also rename this node, this to background. Now and I'll save it as a scene. Hit save. And we want to space things out in our inventory, right? So what you're going to do, you're going to select the margin container. Then the margin theme override will set all of this to 11. And our grid container, I'm going to instance the slot container. Nice. And if we duplicate this, it adds a new slot container downwards, and that's because we have the column set to 1. So if we change this to something like 8, you'll see the container will take 8 columns before moving down to a new one. So let's get rid of this. We'll select this, hold our shift key, and get rid of it. And now let's add our inventory select image to the textured texture. Alright, let me just zoom in on our scene. And we'll set the stretch mode to keep its aspect. Let's rename to selector texture. So selector texture, and we'll save this scene. Now let's add a new script. Click create, then let's get rid of this templates code. And we are going to export a variable slot scene, which is of a type path scene. Okay, so slot scene, we'll set its type to be of a path scene. Then another export variable seed resource, which we'll use to receive our seed resource data that contains the seed and the scene. Right, so this is what we're going to instance in our inventory. So then we'll get an already variable of the selector texture and also of the grid container. Now let's define a ready function, and at the start we'll set the grid container column to the seed resource size. We're going to assign to the grid container the seed resource dot get size. And then let's actually add a method. So then let's test this out actually. Okay, we forgot to set the value. Let me just set that real quick. Let's go to our interface folder. So drag this, and then our resource will go to, let's see, okay, seed resource. And yeah, we'll save this scene. Let's try this again. Okay, so it does work, but we haven't added the slot container yet. But if we check the numbers of columns, that should have updated. So if we go to our remote panel, then we check the grid container, we see the columns has been updated to 8, which is the size of our seed resource. But now we need to display our item info. So let's go back. Okay, now let's do that. We'll call a method add new slot and pass as an argument the seed resource list. So we'll say get seed list, and then let's define the function now. So we'll say func add new slot. So let's paste this here, and we'll set its parameter name as seed array, and this is going to receive an array of seed data, and we'll set its return type to be void. Then we are going to loop through this seed array. So for child in the seed array, and create an instance of the slot scene. So instance slot, and we're going to create a method for that. And this method is going to receive the child as its argument, so the seed data. And let me take a look at this. Okay, so let me just give some spacing here. We'll say func instance slot, and it's going to receive a seed data. So seed data, we'll set its type to be of a type seed data. Seed data, yep. And this is going to return a void. Then we'll instantiate the slot scene and store it in a variable. So var slot is equals to our slot scene dot instantiate. Great. We'll then add the slot as a child of the grid container. So grid container dot add child will pass the slot as its argument. Then connect the slot selected signal to the onSlot selected function, which we'll need to define. But let's assign to the signal the slot selected and the callable to onSlot selected. Yeah, so we'll define that soon. And we're going to call the slot setup method, right? And this is going to receive the seed data as its argument. Great. Okay, let's define the onSlot selected method. So func onSlot selected is value, and this is going to return a void. So let's leave a pass here for now, and let's see if what we've been doing so far is actually going to work. So we're going to run the scene, and yeah, our little inventory system's coming along, but we still can't select a slot, so we'll need to work on that. Let me just create some spacing here. So let's define a function change selected slot, and which is going to receive the position of the new selected slot. So change selected slot, this is going to receive an argument, and its return type set is to void. And we'll say selector texture dot position dot equals the slot pos dot x, and call it in our slot selected function. So don't forget to call change selected slot, and now don't forget to pass the value. All right, nice. Let's save this and let's run this again. And if we click, so it doesn't still work. let's go to our slot container script and see if it's actually being pressed. All right, so let me the item info. No. Let's go to our user interface, select slot container. All right, so when our texture button is down, we want to print pressed. So pressed, yeah. Let's save and run this again. Okay, so I'll click. Let's comment this two line for now. We'll run this again. And it does work. Okay. I think the problem should be coming from our inventory, right? So our selector isn't allowing us to receive any mouse event. Okay, so let's go to our inventory scene and we'll select the selector texture, and the mouse will change its filter to ignore all mouse events. So let's try this again. Yep, it does work, but it isn't placed correctly. That's because we need to also add the margin to the position. So open the script, and where we change the selected slot, we're just going to add our margin to that. So we'll add to the slot X position the margin left constant. So dot get team constant with fast margin left. Great. And now this should work. Yeah, nicely done. But now let's see why we can't see our slot item. Okay, we need to update the slot. So we'll say item info dot set item info dot set item info, and pass the seed data resource texture and the seed data resource quantity. So we'll say item info dot set item info and pass the seed data resource dot get its texture, and the seed data resource dot get its quantity. All right, so let's save this. I think that should work. Okay, so let's run this again. Yes, we are getting close. So let's actually add this to our main scene. And I'm just going to confirm to make sure we haven't probably forgotten anything. All right, let me open this. Okay, so we go to our main scene, and so add a canvas layer. Canva layer, great. And then instance the inventory and set it to the bottom center. So select the anchor and select bottom center. Let's run the scene. And this looks amazing. Now our player is done, our inventory it's almost. All right, let's actually start on being able to plant the selected seed bag from our inventory. So let's go back to our inventory script. And at the start of the game, we want the first slot to be the one selected. So we'll get the first child of the grid container. and assign that to a first slot variable. So pass 0 to get the first child of our grid container. Then let's see. Then we'll emit the global seed change signal and pass the first slot seed data resource. So emit signal seed changed and pass as the argument the first slot dot seed data resource. I think that should be it. Yeah, so seed data resource. Great. And this seed data is going to be assigned to our current scene in the main. So that way, when our game starts, the first item in the inventory is the one being selected. Yeah. Then we'll call the change selected slot method and pass the first slot position. Then back to the main scene, we'll define the ready function. So func underscore ready and connect the seed change signal to an on seed change function. So global.seedChanged.connect to the on seed changed method. So when this signal is being emitted, while our on seed change is going to receive and assign its value to the current seed. Then let's define that function. So func on seed change. Alright, so func on seed changed. And this is going to receive a value. I'm giving some spacing here. And it's also going to return a void. So let's set its value, which requires a new seed value. And we'll set the current seed to our new seed. And we are also going to remove the preload method and change it to change the current seed type to a seed data. Let me just check the script properly so that don't have okay. This is actually current seed dot plant scene, yeah, dot instantiate. Okay, let's take a look again. Yeah, I think that should be it. So save. Yeah, so let's run this again. And if we try to plant, okay, seems like our inventory has a mind of its own. So let's fix that. And I'm kind of confused on what is causing it. Let me change the selected seed from the inventory. The problem should probably come in from our inventory. So we'll check that. Let me just check the scene properly. Okay, since the problem was the texture button focus mode, right? So we'll set that to none. And I believe with that should fix our little problem. And let's try this again. So we selected new seed and our player is working. And now we don't have that weird stuff causing it anymore. Yup. Okay, so whenever we plant a seed, now we want to remove a value from the seed bag quantity. So let's work on that. We'll go to our main, and once we check if we have the seed, we'll say current seed dot subtract quantity. So we're going to run this again. So previously we've been selecting a new seed, but this time it doesn't work, so we can't plant a seed. Why? Because our current seed is empty. And if you are wondering why, that's because we are emitting the seed change signal before actually connecting it to the main scene. So let me just show you what's actually happening. So I'm going to add a print on when the signal is being emitted and the one that is actually emitting the signal. So this line is going to be printed if the function actually receives a call to the seed change signal, right? Then before we actually emit this signal, we are also going to add a print statement too. So let's add that. We'll say print and emit, let's say anything you should do, just emitting signal. So if we run this, so only the emit signal is being printed, and that's because the inventory ready function is being called before the mains on. Again, if you haven't watched my inheritance tutorial, I think you should, because I cover all these aspects in that video. So like I said, the inventory function was called first and emitted the signal before the main could even connect to it. Right, so the inventory ready function is going to be called first. Then if we add another print function to the main, we'll see this ready function is called second, right? Then we are going to run this, and you see that, let me drag this, the ready function of the inventory was called first, then it emitted the signal before the ready function of the main was called, before it could even connect to the signal. Hope that is clear enough. So we're going to get rid of this print statement. And now let's change this from ready to initialize. So delete this we don't want the, right, so initialize, great. And let me just look through the script. All right, so if I remember, there was a scene which I couldn't test independently. So let's check that right here. This, so we couldn't test this scene independently if we click the button. And if the seed data resource is not equals to null, then emit the signal. Okay, that way we can run the scene independently. So if we run the scene again, don't know why I cancel that. Let's run it again. All right, so great, it's working. Now let's fix the signal issue we had earlier on. Now create a new scene and add a canvas layer. We're going to rename this to let's say HUD, and instance the inventory scene. Then we're going to change its anchor to the center bottom. We'll save this in our user interface folder. Then remove the one in our main scene. All right. Okay, now with that, I think we are good for testing. Then let's add our new HUD to the main. Nice. Then after we connected to the seed change signal, that is when we want to initialize the inventory. So head back to your main scene and we're going to define this in our ready function. So we'll say HUD. So HUD dot set up inventory. So with the setup inventory, we are going to use this to call our initialize method. Then in our HUD, add a script and we'll define that function. So func setup inventory, I'll go back to the main and copy this, then paste. Okay, so setup inventory. This is going to return again a void, and we'll say so we're going to call the inventory initialize method. Then we'll get the inventory node and call its initialize method. Now let's run the scene again. So we'll walk and we're going to plant our seed. Right, so you see it works now. All right, we're getting closer to completing our little game. But let's do one more validation, which we're going to use to check if the plants we have, if they see any seed left. So back on our main, so let me close the output panel. Then we'll say if the flower coordinate isn't in its dictionary and the current seed still has some seed left, then we can plant. So with this, it's only when we have a seed left we can plant. So let's run the scene again. Now I'm going to try planting our seed twice. All right, now we can't plant on a tile when we don't have any more seed. But we need a way to tell the player that, hey, you don't have any more seed and can't plant anymore. So let's make use of the play flash animation we made up earlier. And we'll go to our slot container. Then we are going to call a method which we are going to use to play the flash animation, right? And define a function play slot item empty, slot item empty. All right, and this is going to return a void. Okay, and we're going to get the item info node and call the play flash animation. So let's go to the item info. We'll copy this and let's paste this right here. All right, so with this we call the play flash animation. Now when a slot is empty, we are going to pass the seed resource and check in the inventory if any matches it, and we're going to play its flash animation. So we'll say func is slot empty. So is slot empty, yeah. And this function is going to receive a seed data parameter, and the parameter is going to be the current seed from our main, right? So we say seed data, set its type as a seed data, and it's going to return a void. We'll then loop through the grid container TrueGen. So for child, in create container, and we'll get the children. So call the method get children. Great. And check if the child seek data. So this is going to return true if we have a seed data. What was that again? Okay, yeah. So the seed data resource is equals to the seed data. So you can also compare resources together, and they are going to return either true or false. Then we're going to call the child play slot item empty method. So let's copy the method name, and we'll head back, dot, paste that, and yeah. Then in our HUD script, we'll define a function inventory is slot empty, which we'll use to call the is slot empty method. Then we'll call the inventory is slot empty method and pass the seed as an argument. So inventory slot empty, then we'll say seed, and this is going to return a void. Then we get the inventory node, and let's copy this, and we'll call the is slot empty method, right, and pass the seed as the argument. Okay, let's just call the inventory slot empty method in our main, and when we don't have any seed left, so change this to an if statement. So if there is any seed left, we want to do this line of code. Else we call the inventory empty slot method. So else we'll get the HUD node and call the inventory slot empty method. Nice, let's run this again. So our player is working, and we'll try planting our seed. Okay. Now so what is going on? Oh, I forgot to pass the current seed. We'll run this again. So wrong scene. So just press F5. Then our player is working. We'll plant our seed, and nice, it worked. So we don't have a seed, and it gives us our flash effect. And in the next part, we should begin working on our flower shop. Okay, welcome back to the last part of our gardening tutorial. And before we begin, if you found this video super helpful, please could you drop a like or subscribe? That will really mean the world. Now let's start off our flower shop, and we're going to create a new scene, then add a HBox container, and we'll instance the item info scene we created earlier on. So instantiate that. Oops, wrong scene. So just delete that, and we'll instance the item container. So great. Then we'll duplicate this and add a texturate, and we'll move this to the center. I'll rename this to let's say seed extractor. So type seed extractor, and also this to flower info. So type plant info 2, or maybe instead plant info 1. Then this to plant info 2. So the plant info 1 is for the flower, and the plant info 2 is for our seed bag. And we'll add a texture button, and under this texture button we'll add a label. Now I'm going to drag the arrow right to the texturate texture. So select the texture node, and if you check the others asset, drag the arrow right and change its expand mode to fit with proportional, and we'll set the stretch mode to keep aspect. Okay, I'll do the same for both stretch mode of the plant info so that their size doesn't change as well. So if I go to our plant info one and reset this, you see they both remain constant and don't stretch like previously. So just reset that. Okay, now for the button, drag the button normal to the texture normal property and hover to the texture hover property, and toggle on the ignore size and keep aspect, and then keep aspect centered. Then we'll set the container size to expand. So we are going to toggle the horizontal expand mode on. So select the extractor node and increase the width of the container. Then your label set is anchored to the full rect. So click this, and now our label takes the full rect of the texture button. And let's right claim and set its horizontal and vertical alignment to the center. So now the text from the label takes the center of our texture button, and with that we are done with the layout for our seed extractor. Alright, now let's save the scene, and we're going to create a new folder and call this shop. Right, now let's hit save. Now let's implement the functionalities for the seed extractor. And now let's add a new script. So click create, and we are going to get rid of the template code that Godot has provided for us. And we are going to declare a variable plant item and set its type to be of a type plant data. So plant data, and this is what we're going to use to get the texture and quantity of the item which we're going to use to set in the seed extractor container. We will declare another variable seed item and also set the type to be of a seed data. So seed data, great. And now then we'll define the ready function. So we'll say func underscore ready, and actually we just want to update the slots of the containers, right? So we just want to update if it's the label, and that is both the label and the texture of whether the flower or the seed container. Let's change this to func update item container, right? And this will be used to update the item info UI. So again, this is going to return a void. So we'll call a method update UI. So update UI, and pass the plant info node as the first argument. Then the plant item texture. So plant item dot texture, and its quantity. So plant item dot quantity, and we need to define this function for this method, right? So we'll say update UI and set the first parameter as a node. Then item texture, which is going to receive a texture, but we don't need to set that. And quantity. And the quantity is going to receive an integer, but we can just leave it as that. And this is going to return a void. Okay. Then the node will call the item info, set item info method, and pass the item texture and quantity as an argument from the item info scene. So back to the seed extractor, we'll call this method and pass the item texture, so the texture, and quantity as the argument. Nice. Next, we're going to duplicate this and change this to plant info 2 and this to seed item and call the get texture method. So seed item, sorry, that seed item. Okay, and we'll call the get texture method from the seed data as seen. So let's head back, call the get texture method. All right. And also the seed item.get quantity method. So seed item.get quantity. Nice. This is looking good. Now let's actually define a ready function so we can test this out. And we'll change this to an export variable because we will need, some the values to be able to test this out and see if it's actually working, right? And we'll go to our resource folder. So you just drag this. I think it's actually supposed to be the flower list. So just pick this and drag. Then let's do for the seed. Okay, this is kind of confusing, and I think this is actually supposed to be from the flower list and the order from the seed list. Sorry, the seed scene data. Yeah, let's try this out now. And yep, so the flower on the left can be converted for more seed. That's what we actually want. So let's create a function to initialize these values. So now back to the seed extractor script. We are going to get rid of the export annotations, and we want to make sure that we want to call a method which is going to initialize the plant item and seed item variables. So below the ready function, we are going to say func. Actually, we need to also get rid of our ready function, right? So we don't want this being called at the start of our game. All right. We'll say func initialize. So initialize. And this is going to receive two arguments, one of a type plant data and seed, which is of a type seed data. So seed set is type as seed data, going to return a void. Then we'll assign plant to the plant item. So plant item is equals to plant and seed to the seed item. So assign seed to the seed item. And why is that calling a method? Let's change this to seed data instead. So we'll assign this to seed data. Then we'll call the update item container method. Now let's connect the texture button down signal. So select your texture button and we'll connect the button down signal to the seed extractor script. And when the button is clicked, we want to add our seed item resource. Right, so let me just give some spacing here and we'll get rid of this line of code. So we'll say if plant item is not equals to null. So plant item not equals to null. All right. Then we'll check if the plant item, right, is quantity is greater than 0. So plant item dot quantity greater than 0. And seed item is not equals to null as well. Then we'll check if the plant item quantity is greater than 0. Right, and if all of these return true, we want to add to our seed item, which I think we have a method for that to add to the seed item quantity. So let's head back to our script and call the seed item add quantity method. So seed item dot add quantity, and we're going to pass the plant item quantity as an argument. Then once we've done that, we also want to set the plant item quantity to 0, right? Then we'll call the update item container method. Else, then play the item false animation. So we'll say plant info 1 dot play. Let's go and copy the method name, come back, paste that right here, and we also need to add those export value back. So let me just do that real quick. Okay, let's run this now. So we have our plant on the left and the seed on the right, and we currently don't have any plant. And if we click claim, you see it plays our flash effect. And let's go to the remote panel and we are going to add some value to the plant, right? So we can test this out. Where is that? Okay, yeah, it should be in the seed extractor. Yeah, so we are going to add some quantity to our plant, and currently it won't update, right? Because we are not calling the update method which updates it. But if we hit claim, you see it adds to our seed, right? So the quantity has been added. Great. And now we are going to head back to our flower script, right? And we'll export a variable plant item, which is going to be of a type plant data. So, and for each plant, we are going to set their plant data, the resource for them. Then when we harvest a plant, we want to add to the plant item quantity the amount of flowers we earned. So we'll say plant item dot quantity plus equals our amount. So that is going to add to the plant item resource. Then we'll go to our plant varieties folder, select a flower scene. Then we're going to drag the flower resource to the plant item. Now make sure it's the right plant. You drag it to, and and we'll drag from the flower list the bluebell resource, right? So you can see all the data we need, and with that, just do this for the rest. All right, now that should take care of that, and we can start on the flower shop. So add a control node, and let's rename this to, like, let's say florist shop. Then instantiate the background scene, then set its anchor to the center. Okay, now this is too small for us to see, so we're just going to resize it. Okay, so I actually have a value, so I'll set the width to 293 and this height to 222, then center it again. Then as a child of the background, add a margin container. So search for margin container and change its anchor to the full rect. Okay, so I'll set each margin to 20. So the margin left to 20, top 20, so the top to 20, right to 20, and bottom to 20. All right, now we need to add another node. Then let's add a scroll container. So search for scroll container and add, and you can see the area our scroll container is going to take. And add a vertical box container. We're going to rename this to station container. So station container. Great. Then let's instance the seed extractor, and we'll need to do a quick fix. Problem should be from the station container. Yeah, so we'll toggle on the expand property. Yep, so do this for the vertical too, and let's duplicate this a couple of times, and it works. This is looking good so far. So if you change the vertical scroll, I think you see we are able to scroll our FlowerShop, right? So just reset that. Let's add separation between them, right? So we need to space them out. Let's say like 10 we do. Nice. We'll delete all of this. Now we're going to save the scene in our shop folder, then just hit save and select the station container and add a new script to the station counter. Then get rid of the template code in the script, and we'll start by exporting a packaged variable receipt extractor scene. So seed extractor scene, then set its type as a packed scene. Great. Then another export value of a type flower resource. So flower resource, right? Flower resource set its type to be of a flower resource. Then again, an export variable seed resource, which is of a type seed resource. So seed resource, and we'll set its type to be of a seed resource. Great. And what we're going to do, and we'll define a ready function. So func underscore ready, and call a method asset, which is going to flag an error if this expression returns false. Right, so we want to make sure both the flower resource and the seed resource have the same size when the game starts. Then we'll call a method add conversion containers, which we're going to use to add our instance our seed extractor scene, and make sure that each flower resource and seed resource are with the right resource type, so using the resource name we used earlier. And let's define that. So just copy this, then paste func add conversion container. Then we'll say for child in seed resource dot get the flower list. So we're going to get all the items in our flower list. Then we'll say var seed is equals to seed resource dot get seed data. And this is going to make sure that the names of both the flower and the seed are the same, and it's going to return the seed. And we'll pass as an argument the plant name. Right, so that is what the method is going to use to check. We'll then have to check if the seed returned is equal to new, then leave the function. So seed equals null and return. Now, if there is a seed we want to instance the seed extractor scene, right? So we're going to call a function instance conversion scene, and we'll pass the child, which is the flower, and the seed as its argument. And with this we can add our seed extractor scene as a child, and then initialize whatever value we need. So let's just copy this and we'll paste. So we'll define the function instance conversion scene, and this will receive two values. Then don't forget to set its return type as void. We'll instance the seed extractor scene and assign it to the seed variable. Then we'll say dot instantiate. Then we're going to add the scene as a child. So add child, and we'll pass scene as its argument and call the scene initialize method. So scene dot initialize, right? And pass these two values as an argument. And we need to indent this properly, right? Okay, now I think that should do it. Let's see. Let's now set and drag each export value. So we'll go to the shop folder and drag the seed extractor scene to the seed extractor property. Then we'll go to the resource and drag the flower resource and also the seed resource. All right, we'll run the scene. Great, it works. Our little flower shop is coming out fine, and the right flower and seed are joined together. We can scroll for more items, and every flower is placed with their correct seed bag. Also, if we click claim, our flash animation works as well. Now let's head over to our HUD scene and add this. So let me just lay these lines, and okay, I think that should do it. And we'll close the scenes. So back to our 2D scene, close this and this. Alright, back on our main. We'll instance the FlowerShop scene. So oops, not this. So instance the FlowerShop. Great. And you can see the FlowerShop is already taking the full rect of the HUD. We'll drag this up and then hide it. So it's only the inventory we see when the game starts. Now let's run the scene again. Oops, sorry, let's just run it again. Alright. Now let's work on maybe adding some animations, or probably also we need to make the FlowerShop visible, so when we click a button. Now we'll declare an already variable var screen size. So screen size, and we'll say is equals to get viewport dot get visible rect dot size. Then we'll declare a boolean variable inventory hidden. So for inventory underscore hidden, set is type to a boolean and set this to false. We'll define an input event function. So func underscore input event, and set the event type to an input event. Let me just set its return type to be of void, and we'll check if the event we'll then check if this event action is pressed, and the event we're checking for is the toggle inventory. And we'll check if we are not in the FlowerShop state, right? So let's drag the FlowerShop and inventory ready variable like this. So control click and drag, right? Now back to our input event function. So, and not FlowerShop.visible, and we'll assign to the inventory the reverse of the inventory hidden boolean variable. So inventory hidden is not, and say inventory hidden. Great. Then we'll call a method toggle inventory UI, which we're going to use to hide or display our inventory when this action is clicked. So let's define this method. So func, just copy this, func toggle inventory UI, going to return a void, and we're going to create a twin and say dot set is to is in and out dot twin property. So we are just going to chain all the methods together, and we'll pass in the inventory node, and we want to twin its y position. So we'll say position and a column y. So we just want to only change its y position. Then we'll say screen size dot y plus inventory.size.y. So what this is going to do is just move the inventory up. Then we'll say if the inventory is hidden, right, then this to move it up. Else we'll say screen size.y minus the inventory.size.y to move it down. So inventory.size.y. Nice. And we'll set the duration to 0.5 seconds. Alright, so let's try it out now. So hide. Sure. Good, it's working. Now let's work on displaying the FlowerShop. Okay. Close this. And let's go back to our 2D scene. Add a texture button. So a texture button. And we'll go to our assets folder and drag the green circle sprite to the texture. So just expand the texture property. Next, toggle on the ignore texture and set the stretch mode to keep aspect centered. We'll reposition the texture, then resize it. So let me turn on the snap icons and we'll drag this right here. Just increase its size. Nice. I think it's too big. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Alright, let's save that. Then run the scene again. We'll need to change the filter. So go to the texture section and change the filter to linear. Let's run the scene. That's much better. Now we are going to add one more texture rect on top of that, and this is going to be for the cat. So this will be displayed on top of the texture button. So select the texture button and add a texture rect. We'll change the anchor to take its full rect and drag the cat sprite to the texture property. Then we'll change its expand mode to ignore size and scale to keep the aspect centered. Now let's just resize the cat texture and we are going to center the cat. So let me just try dragging this to the center. I'll toggle off the snap and think a little up. Yeah, that should do. Great. Now let's connect the texture button down signal. So select the texture button node button down and click connect. And we are going to toggle the inventory visibility of our flower shop. So just get rid of this line. So we'll say if not FlowerShop is visible. So if FlowerShop dot visible, right? And with that, then we'll create a twin. So var twin is equals to create twin, and let's set is to twin is out, and set the trans to twin dot trans bounce. So twin dot trans bounce. Nice. Then write twin callback, and let's first set the scale of our FlowerShop to vector2.0. So we'll say FlowerShop, right, dot scale. So scale is equals to vector2.0. And in our callback method, we'll call an update UI method, which we'll need to create. So let's just create that right here. All right, so we'll say func to update UI, and this is going to receive a boolean value. Then set its return type to void, and we'll set the visibility of our FlowerShop to the value. So FlowerShop dot visible is equals to value, and the inventory to the reverse of the value. So we say inventory dot visible is equals to not value. So let's change this inventory note to the variable. So that to inventory. All right. Now back to the texture button function. So update UI, and we'll bind this method and pass through as an argument, which is going to be the value when the function is being called. Then we'll want to twin the scale property of the FlowerShop. So we'll say twin property, and we'll say FlowerShop, and as a string we want to twin its scale. Then set its final value to vector2.11 and its duration to 0.25. Right, now let's run the scene. Alright, so it works, but we need to change the FlowerShop pivot property to have its width and the height, that is so we can get the center. So just select the FlowerShop, then go to the inventory property, layout, and then transform, and we'll change the pivot offset to half its width, which is 576 divided by 2, that's 288, and the height to 162. Now that should take care of it, and we'll run the scene again. And we'll hide the FlowerShop again. Let's run this. Amazing, this is beautiful. Okay, so let's go back, and so we'll need to run the scene again to actually see the effect again. So let's go back and we'll run the scene again. Right, so with this, and yeah, now let's work on hiding it now when it's visible. So back to our script, and we'll say else, meaning the shop is visible. We'll create a new twin. So the twin is equals to create twin, and set it is to twin is out. Then we'll twin the shop scale property. So we'll say twin property, pass the FlowerShop as the object. So, and we want to twin the scale property. and set the final value to vector2.0. Then its duration to 0.25 seconds. And we are going to say twin callback. And at the end, we'll call the update UI, get rid of the parentheses. Then bind the method and pass false as a value. We also want to make the inventory visible, so set the inventory hidden to false. And okay, let me actually show you what we want to work on. All right, so just run the scene again. So if the FlowerShop is visible and we toggle the inventory, toggle the shop and back, we want our inventory to show. So let's head back to our HUD script. So again, set inventory hidden to false. And so inventory hidden equals false. And call the toggle inventory UI. We'll run this scene again. And yeah, so you see it's paused all back up. Great, nice. So little nice effect to our HUD. Great, so let's get rid of this. I think that should be it. So let's head to our main game scene and run this there. So there is working. We'll select this. Stuff is popping up whenever I tap the space, so you need to fix that. But it should be an easy fix, so you just need to change the focus to none. Let's test this again. Now we'll toggle the shop and it doesn't display anymore. So let's plant. Now that's working too. No more seed and the flash animation is being played. Now harvest and let's try changing the flower. Okay, so here is one more fix. So it's like earlier, we just need to update the UI. But if we hit claim, you see the quantity is being added to the seed bag. So back to the HUD scene, and we'll go back to when we actually press the texture button. Before we scale the shop, let's emit the global update station signal. So we'll say global.update station and we'll emit this signal. Great. And hopefully this works. We'll run this again. And plant a seed. Let's wait for it to grow. So right now we have 0 plant and we need to harvest our plants. Harvest and it doesn't work. Let me actually try planting. Okay, you see we can still plant and the UI update. So let's fix that now. So we are going to get the FlowerShop station counter node, right? So let's do that after we emit the update station signal. We'll say FlowerShop and we'll get the station container node and call the update plant seed quantity method. So update underscore plant seed quantity. So we just need to only update the text, and we'll actually need to create the function. So let's head back to the station counter script and let's define the function for that. So I'll just give some spacing. We'll say func update seed quantity. So when we call this function, we'll say for child in get children. So get children, all right, and call the child update slot method. So update slots without the s, right? Copy this, and we'll head back to our seed extractor script. I think that should be defined in the script. I think we've done that already. Wait, it seems we need to create, so func update slot, paste that right here, and it's going to return a void. Then we'll get the plant if for one node and call the set label method, and we're going to pass as an argument the plant item quantity, and we're going to do the same for the plant info too. So plant info 2 dot set label and pass the seed item quantity as an argument. Okay, let's head back and run the scene again. We'll plant our seed, and yeah, so it's updates. So you can see our seed bag is 0 now, and if we harvest this, yeah, so we have 4 seeds. Great, and we can claim that for more seed bag. Awesome, nice. Now let's do this for our inventory too, but the inventory isn't updated, right? So back to the HUD script. So for the inventory, we'll say inventory dot update inventory dot update inventory. So head back to the, and let's create the function for that. Inventory scene, and we'll just say func update. So update inventory, and this is going to return a void. And we'll loop through the grid container children. So for child in the grid container dot get is children, all right, and call the child update quantity method. So we'll say child dot update quantity, right, and with that should run fine. All right, let's run the scene again. So we'll plant our seed, and let's plant everything. Yep. So playing this effect is working nice. Then let's harvest our flowers. Okay, so we can harvest our plants. Great, we can harvest those, and let's buy some seed bags. All right, so you see if the flower shop has been updated and we can buy more seed bags. Okay, yep, so it works as well. This is looking really good. If you think so, please do subscribe.